What's up, everybody? I'm Noah Khrachvik. Welcome to Real Talk from the Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis. Tonight, we got some huge news to talk about. The U.S. government, backed by various legalized bribery institutions, cough APAC, right, is attacking the right for students specifically, but all of us to speak our minds, right? To freely assemble and to get the government to address our grievances, right? That's put down in the Bill of Rights. And the government has seemingly turned its back on that and are attacking it legally through changing what the words anti-Semitism means legally, which is a very smooth version of definition mongering. It's wild that this is happening and that it's not a bigger deal to people. It should be all over the media, but where is it, right? Where is the mainstream media on this? Nowhere at all. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about, I'm going to start a series actually where I'm going to, me being, just a regular working class guy, I literally swing a hammer for a living, where me, this working class guy, is going to go to the very tippy top of the bourgeois academy, read their papers, and explain why they're fucking wrong, right? So that should be fun as well. Tonight, we're going to discuss a paper by the famed communist Alain Badu from France, and we'll get to your questions, your comments, your trolls. If you're trolling me, whatever you guys got, we'll get to it because that's what this is about anyway. We want y'all to participate as well. But before we get all that, please stand for the international. All right, welcome back, y'all. Man, that Martin Luther King quote at the end just gets me every time. For real, it's like the way he speaks, it's so moving and powerful. And he's right, and that's the most important thing, that the only way to get you guys know it. I'm not going to get into that. Let's get right into this thing. So, House Bill 1690, right? Let's pull this up. I have the whole text laid up, but I want to show you guys something real quick. Who was it? Here we go. I'm sorry. So 70 here. Oh my God, I forgot to pull it up. I'm so dumb. Screwing up right at the beginning, right? That's me. I apologize. So let's pull that up for y'all. So this Business Insider, right, is portraying these 70 House Democrats and 21 Republicans that voted against this bill as negative, right? The whole thing is like they don't care about anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism is rising on college campuses. Look out, everybody, be afraid. It's anti-Semitism. Don't look under your bed. There's anti-Semitism under there, right? Absurd. Absolutely absurd. But these 91 people, 70 Democrats and 21 Republicans, overwhelmingly lost the vote. So this has gone through in our Congress. What does that mean? What is House Bill 6090? House Bill 6090 supposedly leans on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the legendary Civil Rights Act, leans on this to supposedly fight this anti-Semitism that's under our beds and look out, everybody, right? But what it does is changes the entire thing, what anti-Semitism is, to cover anyone that's criticizing any what do they call it, Jewish institutions, or and things of that nature, meaning the state of Israel and the actions of those institutions. They now can call that anti-Semitism, right? Which is absurd, meaning the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of students right now who are protesting this, especially at the Columbia campus, where they were all mass arrested the other night. By the way, our own director of our international department, Danny Shaw, was taken with a bunch of students, by the way. It only got out the following morning. It was crazy. But they're attacking all of these students for what? Are they actually saying hateful things? Are they harming anybody? They're actually not doing much of anything. They just went to their campus because that's what you do, right? You stand up, you say no to a genocide. That's what they're doing. They're exercising their constitutionally guaranteed freedom of speech. That used to be important to people in this country, right? That used to be something that our government, at least supposedly, was here to protect. But what's happened to that? Not only do they not protect it, they're openly attacking it by using this weaselly, dishonest language of labeling a stand against genocide anti-Semitic. Why? Who's been hurt? It's insane to me. It's insane that they're able to get away with this. A friend of ours sent me a really, really good, we're going to be, whoa, I'm throwing my pen around. That's how heated I'm getting about this. I lost my train of thought now. Yeah, a friend of ours sent me a really, really good thread that a friend of his did on Twitter about this. I want to get to that. We're going to be doing a collaboration piece from the Institute on this entire thing, though. It's already started. Hopefully, it'll be out tomorrow or the next day. We're just waiting for Carlos and I think Kyle to add a couple sections to it. But I want to share that too. But first, let's take a look at the bill itself and go through it. Okay, got to put another screen share. Sorry, guys. One moment. All right, here it is. HR 6090. Sorry, I was kind of going through it before. All right, this is the official bill, right, from Congress.gov. The 118th Congress, blah, 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 blah. To provide for the consideration of a definition of anti-Semitism set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Now, that's an NGO, right? For the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws concerning education programs or activities, and for other purposes, you know, those famous other purposes, right? And it's got the people who sponsored it on here, which is Gottheimer and Miller, Moskowitz, Keene, Jackson, Fitzpatrick. You can read. Anyway, so Section 1, the short title, the act may be cited as Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. The language of these blows my mind. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hate George Orwell as much as the next guy, right? He was an anti-communist police snitch that ratted out communists to the government and had them arrested, right? But if there's a better example of Orwellian language and action, of saying the exact opposite of what you mean, I don't know what it is. All right. So we're going to go right to section 1 here. The Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act. Like I said, this is what they're trying to lean on. The Civil Rights Act. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. That's a good thing, right? Remember when that Civil Rights Act was put through? That's a Jim Crow era. That's a segregation era. All sorts of institutions, businesses, schools, organizations, etc., were discriminating on the basis of race and color and national origin, immigrants, etc., right? And so that was no longer allowed. If people wanted federal financial assistance for their church, for their school, whatever it was, they could no longer do that. And that was a good thing, right? That's part of what got us to where we are right now, in the sort of American trajectory, right? This closer people where we're not legally segregated anymore. Removing the sort of the formal legal foundation of segregation that changes the social consciousness of everybody who grew up in its absence rather than its presence, right? That's why nowadays you don't have lynching anymore, right? The norm is, if not outright anti-racism, then at least non-racism. And it's the sort of minority that's racist, right? Not minorities are racist, but the minority of the population is now racist rather than vice versa. That was a big deal. And so for them to lean on the civil rights political revolution for this disgusting bill is just, it's insulting. It should be insulting to all of us, to all Americans. Let's continue. While such title does not cover discrimination based solely on religion, individuals who face discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics do not lose protection under such title for also being members of a group that share a common religion. That's cool, right? 3, discrimination against Jews may give rise to a violation of such title when the discrimination is based on race, color, or national origin, which can include discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics. Okay. It is a policy of the United States to enforce such title against prohibited forms of discrimination rooted in anti-Semitism. Now, listen to this wording, as vigorously as against all other forms of discrimination prohibited by such title. And 5, as noted in the U.S. National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism, issued by the White House on May 25th, 2023, it is critical to, and I mean, they base this on, I don't know if y'all remember that. That was before the big boost of the neo-Nazis on social media. That was when they were telling us the entire Palestinian solidarity movement was riddled with anti-Semitism and couldn't find any, right? Anyway, it's critical to increase awareness and understanding of anti-Semitism, including its threat to America. That sounds crazy to me. I think everyone understands what anti-Semitism is. I think we all are very aware of it, and it's threat not only to America, to everyone. But that's not the issue, right? B, improve safety and security for Jewish communities. C, which are they under threat? I'm not aware of this. C, reverse the normalization of anti-Semitism and counter anti-Semitic discrimination. And D, expand communication and collaboration between communities. Now, are any other communities that they're saying they want to sort of fight this as vigorously as, are any of them getting bills? Right? This sounds a lot like how all of this sort of wreckers and rad libs calling themselves communists constantly bring up problems that don't exist, right? In order to sort of virtue signal, morally posture, whatever, right? That's what it sounds like to me. Well, I think it's interesting how the same sort of tactic is being used here, right? Where they're saying that we have this rampant problem with anti-Semitism, right? It's exactly like the wreckers and Radlibs, the right opportunists, blah blah blah, right? I find that it very, very interesting. Anyway, let's continue. So I know you guys are excited to hear their findings. I am too. Let's go to that, right? So one, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States and it's impacting Jewish students in K through 12 schools, colleges, and universities. I have a 14-year-old, right, in high school. He hasn't mentioned anything. None of my friends' kids have mentioned anything. No one I know that's in the actual Palestine solidarity movement right there in college campuses have noticed anything. The place we notice this is social media, where certain corporations own the platforms and the infrastructure in which this happens. We all know sort of the way certain narratives get boosted and pushed. We all know the way the Institute, for instance, gets censored, gets throttled, gets shadow banned, etc. Right? So I find it very coincidental. The one place it can be gained, it is gained. Social media. If you just go to social media, you'd be like, oh my God, these neo-Nazis all just showed up out of nowhere. Interesting. All right, let's go to number 2. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, working definition of anti-Semitism, is a vital tool which helps individuals understand and identify the various manifestations of anti-Semitism. Now, once we're done with this section, I want to go to that. I have that pulled up too, because you got to see what they want to call anti-Semitism. It's wild. All right, so on December 11, 2019, there was an executive order, 13899, extended protections against discrimination under the Civil Rights Act to individuals subjected to anti-Semitism on college and university campuses, and tasked federal agencies to consider that working definition of anti-Semitism when enforcing Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, right? Meaning that they can pull federal funding from schools if they're not cracking down on this fake anti-Semitism. Pull federal funding. It gets worse. Since 2018, the Department of Education has used the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism when investigating violations of that Title VI, blah, blah, blah. The use of alternative definitions of anti-Semitism impairs enforcement efforts by adding multiple standards and may fail to identify many of the modern manifestations of anti-Semitism. You notice they don't actually explain them or why they're harmful. In this entire bill, they don't. And we can go through all the rest of the legalese, but I kind of want to get to this analysis our friend sent us because it's really good. And it explains sort of where this is coming from and how it works really well. And I just wanted to show it to you guys. But let's go to the working definition real quick. All right. Working definition of anti-Semitism. So you can read the full text, blah, 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 in their like thing below, but let's do this. In the spirit of the Stockholm Declaration that states, With humanity still scarred by whatever it was, anti-Semitism and xenophobia, the international community shares a solemn responsibility to fight those evils. The Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial called the IHRA plenary in Budapest 2015 to adopt the following working definition of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community institutions and religious beliefs. That Jewish community institutions is how they can twist this into anyone who speaks out against Israel or Zionism or the genocide the state of Israel is currently engaged in, that our politicians who are funding it are funding, right? Who are funded by the Israel lobby, which if you're not aware of lobbying, what lobby it is, I'm not sure what to tell you, but basically it's legalized bribery. This is corporations, organizations, etc., getting together giant sums of money to bribe our government officials to write policy that is favoring them. That's literally what it is. Our government whines and complains all the time that, China has corruption problems, right? And they did. Don't get me wrong. But China has an anti-corruption campaign, entire sets of policies set up to fight that corruption. When we get corruption, we don't fight it here. Our government decides, we'll just legalize, right? Easy peasy. It's no longer corruption if that's just how the system works, right? Anyway, manifestations might include the targeting of the state of Israel, conceived as a Jewish collectivity. However, criticism of Israel, similar to that leveled against any other country, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic, and that's not in that working definition, right? This part's separate. Anti-Semitism frequently charges Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, and it's often used to blame Jews for, quote, why things go wrong, right? Yeah, that's fine. It's the part right before that that's so worrying. So I don't know. I'll catch up on your comments here real quick if anyone has any questions. But it's crazy that this is happening. And it's crazy that nobody's doing anything about it. Right? Jason Bohm says it's fascism in the making. And that's exactly 100% what it is. Right? And all the radlibs who were like, Trumpian fascism, the fascist threat from Trump. Who's doing this? Genocide Joe Biden, right? Not Trump. Now, Trump's just as Zionist as Biden, but to separate these things and pretend that Trump was some fascist threat and Biden some lesser evil, no, the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. And I feel like the whole last generation's left failed to comprehend that. Like they're living in this period where FDR was around and could get sort of pushed by the communist movement when it had power, right? But our communist movement got squashed and the Soviets fell, right? If you go up to most people, they don't even know we still have a communist party. So how do they expect genocide Joe Biden, who's allied to neo-Nazis in Ukraine and allied to the forces carrying out a genocide in Israel, how do they expect this guy to be their hero that stands against fascism? And why would they tell us to waste our time and energy trying to get Democrats elected? What has a Democrat done for you? Ask yourself that question. What has any single bourgeois politician done to earn your vote? Oh, wait. Nothing, nothing, not a damn thing, right? This notion that there's somehow like a lesser evil should be silly and we shouldn't even have to deal with it anymore. Honestly, I don't know why people still talk like that. It's cuckoo bananas. I want to take a minute though and pause, remind you guys, we have been demonetized, and that is a huge, huge deal, right? Google AdSense still won't even tell YouTube why they demonetized us, but it has something to do with the proxy war our ruling class is engaged in against Russia. Could be very similar to how they've censored so many others in the past. Tucker Carlson recently had that amazing interview that Carlos and I covered with Amalia Yeshatila. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Amazing guy, charismatic leader. They actually arrested him for telling the truth about that proxy war. So it's wild. But since you can no longer send super chats and things like that, if you want to help us out, this is a completely people-funded institute. We get no money from any, Chinese billionaires or Putin, despite what all the liberals tell us constantly. Excuse me. You can do that at patreon.com/MidwesternMorks. Make sure while you're at it, check out our Discord, which is now public. Hopefully let me see if I can get a link for you guys to put in the chat. Here we go. All right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's a link to our Discord. Now, if you join the Discord, we're going to be doing the call-in version of Real Talk very soon. So get ready for that. It should be fun. We'll be taking your calls live on the stream, talking to you if you have questions, you need advice on how to talk to your coworkers about Marxism and communism. That's what we're here for. You just want to complain about your boss, come on up and talk, right? Say you want to debate me, bring it on. That's what Real Talk's going to be all about once we have the setup. We're just about ready for that too, which I'm kind of excited. So, yeah, there's our little interlude for you. Sorry, super thirsty. I had a long day at work today. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a Finnish carpenter, right? I got up around 4 this morning, and right now I'm doing a big study of political economy, right? So I'm going through a lot of Michael Hudson's later work. The third edition of Super Imperialism is one I'm studying really hard. Some stuff by Radhika Desai, and I'm comparing it. I'm sort of like doing it with this sort of guide from with Ilyankov basically as my guide, right? Dialectics of abstract and concrete, figuring out what about modern financialized imperialism is so destructive, and that's part of the whole reproletarianization book project. Anyway, so I finished studying around 7 and going to work, where the sun is just immediately in my face, right? Right now, I'm building some fences. Not hard work, very easy cuts, small stuff. I was recently injured, actually. I injured my spine, and I'm only able to talk for extended periods of time without a lot of pain now. But so the light load is really good for me. Spend 9 hours doing that, and I came back here. But the whole time, no matter as I worked, when I went along the fence, the sun was directly in my face. Horrible, horrible. So I'm worn out today, y'all. I apologize if I'm not bringing the same energy I usually do. But anyway, let's get back to it. I really wanted to share this because it's brilliant. And usually I would sort of sum it up, but I want to read this almost in full to you guys because it's so good. So I'm gonna share my screen one more time here. All right, can you all see that? All right, this is I wasn't aware who this person is. Oop, we don't need that up. That's the guy who sent it to us. All right. We don't. I wasn't aware of who this is. Gen X girl, 1994. But if the rest of her stuff is like this, flawless, absolutely brilliant. I loved it. All right, so killing the Constitution through false equivalency, she calls it, right? Pull this up a little so I can read it better. There's a coordinated effort by pro-Israel sponsored and funded members of Congress, which is most of them, to pass multiple laws to censor speech for the benefit of Israel, a foreign country. Think about that for a minute. Not even in sort of defense of our own ruling class, but a foreign country, because they're so invested in these other countries that the American people must suffer in order for their financial sort of integration to thrive, right? Make no mistake, she continues. This is not an effort to protect Jewish people in America, since civil rights laws already afford this group protection under the law, similar to everyone else. Remember how the bill was saying that they want to fight anti-Semitism as hard as every other form of discrimination? Well, where's the new bill to fight anti-Black racism? Where's the new bill to fight homophobia? Where are these new bills? Right? It's absurd that only anti-Semitism gets this treatment. Why? Because Israel is where a ton of their money is tied up. The efforts by pro-Israel members of Congress and their Israel lobby donors are an attempt to make criticism of Israel a criminal offense by incorporating the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism into U.S. laws. That's the definition, that really vague thing I read earlier, right? If successful, this will be the first time in U.S. history where Americans lose their First Amendment rights at the behest and benefit of a foreign nation, Israel. That's crazy, right? Think about that. Yeah, Rondo Ellsworth, that's a very, very good point, brother. How this bill isn't considered sedition is crazy to me too. Believe me. Moses Denton says Benjamin Netanyahu should be tried as a war criminal. It is no better than any other world dictator and doesn't represent the Jewish people. This bothers me, right? I'm ethnically Jewish. We actually have a joke in my family that we say we're Jewish, right? Because it comes from my grandma or my grandfather's side, and like technically you're supposed to, it's got to come through your mom or you're not Jewish, right? But anyway, blah blah blah. This guy claims to represent my family and every other Jewish family in the world, right? Israel represents us? No. No. You don't get to do that. You don't. Yes, you can represent all of the rich people from Brooklyn who are living in stolen houses. Absolutely. Go ahead and represent those people. But to talk about representing all of the Jewish people in the world is insane, right? I don't know who's on our account saying that. It's true. Yeah, the I'm influencing the Institute on behalf of Israel. All American communists are Jews confirmed. There was this really hilarious meme. I think the infrared guys did. Who it was just all American communists Jewish confirmed, and it had just like random infrared people with stars of David on them. Like, it's like black guys, Arabic guys, Mexican guys, like, clearly not Jewish guys. The JQ people bought it. They shared it around like, oh my God, we knew it. The most easily manipulated people, I swear. So it's too easy with them. Anyway, this is actually very scary stuff. Let's get back into it. So, where were we? Right here. The effort is very clever. And here's, before we get to this, there's more than just this one House bill, right? The way legal attacks on our rights work is they incorporate a bunch of different moving pieces, because the whole point is to make it incredibly complicated, right? So it's hard to like sort of work out what's going on. Anyway, the effort is very clever, she says, because on the surface, each bill appears to simply incorporate anti-Semitism into law. However, the particular definition of anti-Semitism that is utilized is the IHRA's new definition, which includes criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism, which is crazy. This is what they've been doing all along. And you know what's really weird to me? It seems almost like it's meant to promote anti-Semitism, right? Because if Israel does represent all Jewish people, then all Jewish people must therefore be responsible for this brutal genocide against the Palestinian people. And the real world has nothing to do with it in that case, right? In the real world, Israel represents a tiny minority of people who are Jewish. And their being Jewish has literally nothing to do with it. They could be any other ethnic group, religion, whatever, right? And they could still be committing genocide. The Nazis committed genocide. They weren't Jewish, right? It doesn't have to do with this group or that group. It has to do with the necessity of fascism as capitalism's contradictions sort of close in around it, right? And in this modern era, that comes in different forms in different particular countries, right? In Israel, it has to take this form because of the particular history of the country, right? This is an apartheid state based on people being sort of shoved there after World War II, right? And we're not going to get into the whole theft of everything the Palestinians have. All that, you guys know that, right? What I'm saying is a particular history governs the form this takes and leads to their genocide. It has nothing to do with their being Jewish. It's ridiculous to think it does. Collectively, these laws create a web of legal standards to criminalize criticism of Israel as discrimination, hate speech, threat of violence, and hate crime. The laws put the onus of enforcement on recipients of federal government funding, such as educational institutions, right? They can pull your funding if you're not cracking down per what they want you to do, right? Along with that, federal agencies and state and local governments. The following provides a more detailed explanation with hyperlinks to the full documents, and this is what I really wanted to get to, why we came here. So we went over the IHRA definition already, right? Define to defeat act, though. We didn't go over this. The bill would incorporate the IHRA definition under the civil rights laws, right? If enacted, criticizing or protesting Israel because of apartheid, genocide, ethnic cleansing, drawing comparisons of Israeli policy to Nazi policy, or advocating for Palestinian freedom will be considered anti-Semitism and discrimination under these laws. Think about what they're doing right there. They're changing the legal way words have to be understood. That's literally what part of that book, 1984, by that, anti-communist snitch guy is about, right? Changing what words mean so that when words are said, other things are thought of. That is crazy. The purpose is to force institutions that receive federal funding to censor speech with regard to criticism of Israel or risk losing their funding, deter private companies from supporting human rights for Palestinians, and define advocacy for Palestinians as hate speech. Now, you know what this reminds me of? The director of our international department, Professor Danny Shaw, was fired from his job at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Right? Why? For standing against genocide. That school gets public funding, right? I think it gets state funding. It's a SUNY school, or is it a CUNY school? It's one of the two. It gets funding from the government, right? Now, if you're one of these schools and you know your funding is under threat and you have a prominent communist on your staff who is every single day saying genocide is wrong, we stand against genocide. Genocide is wrong. We stand against genocide. What do? Right? You protect your funding. What else are they going to do? If they pull that funding, the entire school's gone. I don't know. This seems almost designed to create anti-Semitism. I'm not kidding. This it's really insidious and gross. I don't know how else to put it. Let's continue. Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2023. That's the one we went over, the House bill, the one that went through, right? Already. This would incorporate the same definition of anti-Semitism. It would also require the Department of Education to use that definition when enforcing federal anti-discrimination laws on college campuses. The purpose is to force educational institutions that receive federal funding to censor speech with regard to criticism of Israel or risk losing their funding. The Columbia Act is another one. That bill would incorporate the same definition of anti-Semitism. It would also empower the Department of Education to impose a third-party monitor for anti-Semitic activity using that definition of anti-Semitism on universities and colleges that receive federal funding. Now, I wonder who's going to be doing who that third party is, right? They're forced to get one of these Zionist NGOs to act as their thought police, basically. Those that don't comply risk losing their federal funding under Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. That is so beyond messed up. The purpose is to force educational institutions that receive federal funding to censor speech with regard to criticism of Israel or risk losing their funding. There's more, yeah. Countering Anti-Semitism Act. This bill would incorporate the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. It would also establish a policing mechanism to ensure all federal government agencies and all recipients of federal government funding censor speech with regard to criticism of Israel or risk losing their funding. Ensure reporting and recommendations of new laws to further censor speech to Congress. The Ending Subsidies for Pro-Terrorist Activities on Campus Act. They call standing against genocide pro-terrorist activities. How does that work, right? Well, Israel is the legitimate state, right? It doesn't matter that they're committing genocide and that the people fighting back, Hamas and its allies, Hezbollah, etc., who are backing them, they consider them illegitimate. They are not able to fight for their freedom according to our government, even though international law gives them that right undeniably, since they are living in occupied territory. Israel came in and stole all of their land, all of their property, their water, their food, their work. All of it is controlled by the state of Israel. They have the right to fight back with arms in international law, yet our government labels them terrorists. Therefore, if they say they're and by the way, we didn't vote on that, did we? No. Democracy, right? But so they call them terrorists, and therefore they get this ending subsidies for pro-terrorist activities. I believe this is happening. The entire country should be outraged about this. Anyway, this bill would incorporate the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, right? It would also equate advocacy of Palestinian freedom to support of terrorist activity by correlating the goal of freedom and self-determination for Palestinian people as, quote, urging support for, endorsing, espousing, encouraging, organizing for, or promoting a foreign terrorist organization's terrorist activities. Obviously, students and organizations would risk losing eligibility for federal student aid, and universities risk losing their federal funding if they don't punish students. So, if you're a student, right? Here, let's I don't remember where I put it. All right. Sorry about that. So, if a student decides that they want to stand against genocide, like the majority of students right now, right? They can get their entire student loans pulled. All their federal loans and grants that they could get, done. School is no longer an option for them. This is economically attacking and forcing them to not stand up for humanity. This would be like the Nazis, right? Saying that if you protest what they're doing to Jews, then you're not allowed to go to college. You're not allowed anything. Your economic opportunities are done. Right? Unreal. Anyway, what do you guys think of that? Yeah, I agree, Rondo. I agree. It's a scary time we're living in. I'll tell you what. I worry. Like I said earlier, I have a 14-year-old son, right? He's going to be in college in, 4 years? Hopefully, Is he going to be able to speak his mind? Right? If they're doing this now, how much further will they go? Because things like this is an all-out assault on our Bill of Rights, right? We are constitutionally guaranteed the right to freedom of speech, assembly, and redress of our grievances, right? They're attacking that. These kids aren't doing anything, right? Let's talk about the students. I salute everything they're doing, right? It is a good thing to sort of take a stand and make your voice heard, like, right? But they're not a threat to anyone. They're organizing these sort of encampments, right? And they have food there, and they have like a sort of like a set of rules everyone has to follow. It's very organized. And from what I hear, there were some anarchists at the Columbia one who were suddenly nowhere to be found when the cops showed up. Imagine that. But they're getting organized, and this is good training for anywhere else they can go after this, right? But right now, they're students. They're not a threat to anybody, but even them standing up in numbers they are and saying no to genocide is empowering for the people fighting for their freedom in Palestine, and they've said it. Right? And in Yemen, who are aiding that same fight. You know, there was a really famous photo recently of a rally in Yemen, and a soldier, it looked like he was holding an assault rifle. He was holding a sign that said, it had a picture of an American student being arrested and dragged off by cops. And it said that, they can arrest you, but they can never kill your spirit. And that spirit's good, man. I'll tell you what, those kids are inspiring. What it takes to go further, and here's the real point. Do we want our stand against genocide to matter? Do we want our demand that our government stop funding this? That our government completely pull every last dime out of that godforsaken country? Do we want that to have teeth? Then what do we do? Right? Protesting is good, but protesting is not enough. Organize. To any of these students who may be there, I salute you, and I hope you're listening. Go to the people next to you and say, what comes next? How do we move forward? Start building the infrastructure to move forward. You want help? We will help. That is how we win. All of us together building concrete institutions. So we take this fight to take the government, who clearly no longer represents us and clearly has abandoned their oath to defend the Constitution and are therefore in dereliction of duty. We take the fight to them. And we say, you had your chance. You blew it. Time for something new. Right? In order to free Palestine, for our voice to matter, for us to actually get in that fight, we must free America. We must take our country back so that we have political power. That is the number one most important thing we can do. If we want any of our internationalism to be more than just good messages, and don't get me wrong, good messages are a very good thing, right? They're important. But if we want to have more than messages, then it's time we think about this for real. Class struggle is not just putting a hammer and sickle emoji in your social media. Class struggle is difficult, right? It requires organization and cooperation with people that you may not agree with on a whole lot of issues, right? Who may have said mean things about you or to you, but it doesn't matter because the goal is power to the people. And guess what? You're never going to agree with all the people. So don't let any disagreements stand in your way. Get organized, right? That is how we win. All of the little organizations that are popping up right now to replace the completely impotent fake left of the last period of history carry with it the future of this country. And you might think I'm being hyperbolic. I'm not. I believe that. I genuinely believe that. Anyway, that's all I got on that. Oh, my neck's starting to hurt quite a bit. So I usually don't cover like breaking news stuff. I'm more of a theory guy, right? I like to think about things for a very long time before I make up my mind, but this is too important. Not that I haven't thought about it. I have, obviously, but this is too important to not talk about right now, right? Anyway, so I need to go run. You know what? Never mind. I'm so used to having Carlos or Eddie here, so I can be like, "Hey, yo, I need to go run and grab some ibuprofen." But it's just me, so I'm not gonna leave you all with dead air. Um, the other part of our show tonight, I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Um, I wrote a paper. One of the papers I'm most proud of, actually, a while ago, and it's scheduled to be released in the Journal of American Socialist Studies 3. It's called Against the Fake Left. This paper was written originally as part of, I was on a panel put on by the International Manifesto Group and one of the best friends of the Midwestern Marx Institute, Radical Desai. And it was about how intellectuals have been severed from the working class. I'm sorry, my camera fell a little bit. It slipped. Hold on. Oh. There we go. Yeah, so we did this panel, right? Now, I got invited to be on it, I think, because I was the only working class guy there. The rest were intellectual, right? Which is fun. But every time I get on one of those panels, because I'm a working class guy, I get this big, horrible, horrible case of imposter syndrome, right? I'm like, here I am with, and you know, Carlos is a great friend of mine, but let's be real, he's a lot smarter than me, right? I'm cool with that. But I'm there with Radica and Gabriel Rockhill and all these brilliant people that, you know, they have this immense honor and privilege of being able to study for a living. And I wish I could do that, right? I wish I'd put in the time and dedication when I was a younger man to set myself up for the chance to do that. But, you know, you live and you learn. But anyway, I wrote this paper on it. Well, so I get this sort of presentation ready, right? And Carlos tells me maybe 20 minutes before the panel's ready to go, like, hey, please don't go over the time limit, all right? I'm like, time limit? He's like, yeah, there's a 15-minute time limit. And I'm like, oh, God. My presentation was like 40 minutes long. Oops. Right. So the entire time I'm trying to do this presentation, I'm like leaping from topic to topic like some kind of like manic grasshopper, right? Just bing, 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 and trying to like go like, you guys know what that means, right? Okay, good. Let's move on to this. Blah, 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 blah. Right. Horrible. What horrible for me. I came off sounding like I was an idiot, which happens more often than not, right? But that's okay. So anyway, the questions and answers went great. It was very fun despite my snafus. But what that did was it gave me a chance to sit down and write this paper, right? Where I could collect my thoughts and I could get assistance from my good friend Eddie Smith, who actually ended up helping collaborate on one section of the paper. And it sort of expanded out from how intellectuals in particular are divorced from the working class into how the middle class and the working class have this gulf between, right? There's a big culture clash. I don't know any other proletarians out there. If you've ever tried to go into any of the like organizations on the left, right? They're all dominated by middle class types. And there's a culture there, an atmosphere that is just repellent, absolutely repellent. We always joke that they run meetings like an HR meeting, right? Because it's true. And don't nobody want to go to a HR meeting in the working class. They just don't. I don't know what else to tell them. The the people in one organization I was working with for a time used to always ask me, Noah, why don't you bring any of your coworkers here? You always tell us like how you talk to them about communism all the time and Marxism and stuff, which is true. I do, and all of them are on board for American communism, like 100%. Like continually asking me what's going on with it, right? Like what's going on with your communist movement? Let's go, man. Come on, that kind of thing. But they would ask me why I didn't bring them to those meetings, right? And it was because of that culture clash. Well, I would be embarrassed, right? Any guys I had ever worked with, if I brought them to one of these meetings, they would never let me the end of it. Like, you sit there and you take all that woke bullshit, and like I did, right? Because I'm here for it, man. I don't care that that's how they are. I want to do something. That's me. That's who I've always been. Anyway, so I write this paper, and it gets me thinking, right? That there is a divide between the entire middle class and the working class, and the middle class of our period, what's left of it, which includes intellectuals, right? Includes academics, is sort of closer to the bourgeois class ideologically than ever before in history, right? Wokeism as sort of reflexive ideological thinking patterns is distributed in the academy, right? In the NGO and think tank, yes, but in the academy. And I think we underestimate the power of bourgeois academics sometimes to sort of give marching orders to the wider left, right? And so I'm going to start this series where I'm just going to read stuff by academics who are these, fancy pants. And I'm going to explain why they're wrong. Because one of the things that really grinds my gears about intellectuals, and this isn't all of them, I want to say that the exceptions are those intellectuals who are sort of situated against the institution of academia, right? The academy, who are critical of it. People like Carlos, right, is the anti-intellectual, Radical Assad, Gabriel Rocco, these people that I've met that I respect like no other, but intellectuals in general have this way of looking down on everyone else, of thinking we're stupid because we haven't read, the archives of letters they've read by some random, like by Horkheimer or some asshole, right? We're dumb. Like, we can't think. And that bothers me because fuck you. That's why. Just fuck you. The idea that these, like, comfortable 6-figure salary nerds who are completely cut off from the entire working class of their own societies and develop dogmas around looking down on them because they're cut off from them, because they can't experience that, because that ivory tower is, somewhere up in the air, not down on planet Earth. They sort of get this inherent superiority, and that bothers me so much. Again, because fuck you. Who are you? Like, I care what you read. One of the leading minds of our era, I guess, since May 68 in France, right? Is Alain Badu. I don't know if you guys know who this guy is. I may be pissing some people off when because I'm going to criticize the hell out of him. He's known as a Maoist. He's very anarchy, like very. He likes all of the excess of the great proletarian cultural revolution in China. The whole like storm the headquarters, child soldiers, etc. Like the things the modern sane Communist Party of China criticizes, right? Like having child soldiers. Anyway, that's who we're going to be discussing. He wrote a paper recently that Carlos sent me. He knew I would get a big kick out of it. So we're going to share our screen here, and we are going to read this together. All right. You guys see that? Cool. Actually, let me get rid of that real quick because that's wrong. All right. Excellent. Okay. Politics Today, 13 Theses and Commentaries. You guys excited? It's only 13 pages. So let's read the quick abstract. Across 13 theses and their associated commentaries, the article analyzes the contemporary global situation, points to its constitutive contradictions, and characterizes the most recent failed attempts to transform it. It proposes a conceptual framework, having learned these lessons from previous historical failure, that will allow the conception and practical articulation of what a yet to be invented politics must be. Now, I want to say off the bat that Mr. Badu here is making a mistake of idealism. That the politics to be that have not come into being yet are arriving from his mind. Right? And yes, he's basing this on the real world. But politics happens in the real world first. And he's going to miss this over and over and over again throughout this paper. He will miss what's happening right in front of his face because he has a very social chauvinist view of refugees, of third world people, etc. Let's continue. Thesis 1. The global conjuncture is one of the territorial and ideological hegemony of liberal capitalism. Okay. I don't know what he means by territorial, but yes, the ideological hegemony of liberal capitalism, of course, right? Commentary evidence. The banality of this thesis exempts me from any commentary. Okay. He's saying he's banal, I guess. Thesis 2. This hegemony is not at all in crisis, is still less comatose, but is in a sequence of deployment that is particularly intense and novel. Now, this is another thing that bothers me about intellectuals. He says a sequence of deployment. Like, can't he just say like a stage of development? Like, why do you gotta say a sequence of deployment, you asshole? What is your problem? Anyway, I think he's. I don't want to say he's wrong for a fact that the hegemony is not in crisis, but we're getting there. I think his logic isn't as dialectical as he might think it is, because he's viewing this as not part of an ongoing process, right? That what is happening is built from what was. What will happen is built from what is, right? He's just saying, well, yeah, this sequence of deployment is particularly intense and novel, as if it's like, okay, it'll stay just that, right? His commentary, though, Oh, let's check this before. Okay. There are hegemonic today two equally opposed and equally false theses about capitalist globalization. The first is a conservative thesis that above all else, capitalism, in combination with parliamentary democracy, is a definitive form of human economic and social organization. This is truly the end of history, a motif recently popularized by Fukuyama. Second is the leftist thesis, according to which capitalism has entered its final crisis, which is to say that it is already dead. Okay, so that's what he's going to criticize, right? The first thesis, he says, is nothing more than the repetition of the ideological process engaged in from the end of the 70s by the renegade intellectuals of the red years. He's calling 65 to 75 the red years for some reason. Maybe a French thing, I don't know. In which purely and simply consisted in the elimination of the communist hypothesis from the field of the possible. It therefore allows us to simplify the dominant propaganda that is no longer necessary to vaunt the dubitable merits of capitalism, but only to register that the facts, the USSR, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, China, the Khmer Rouge, which he adds to that for some reason, and the Western Communist parties, have shown that nothing else is possible other than a criminal, quote, totalitarianism. In the face of this impossible verdict, the only possible response, drawing and extending the balance of the fragmentary experiments of the last century, is to reestablish the communist hypothesis in its possibility, force, and liberatory capacity. It is this, inevitably, which occurs and will occur in which, in this text, I yet maintain. Do you see how weirdly he has to set that entire sentence up? It is this inevitably, which occurs and will occur, in which, in this text, I yet maintain. Just a very weird way of putting it. Basically, yeah, everyone knows it's not the end of history, right? Communist China is leading the entire world right now. Want, want. The two forms of the second thesis, exsanguinating or dead capitalism, are based on the 2008 financial crisis, the inflationary monetary disorder triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic, and on the daily revelations of further innumerable incidents of corruption, from which the conclusion either that the moment is revolutionary, that only a strong push is needed for the system to collapse, classic leftism, or it is enough to take a step aside, to retire, for example, to the countryside and to live a sober life in harmony with nature, in order to then come to the realization that one can organize new, quote, forms of life, the destructive capitalist machine running on empty in its final throes of nothingness, or ecological Buddhism. Basically, what he's saying is that the only other idea out there is either that capitalism is at its very, very last, like hanging on by a thread, and either we need to shove it aside and pull that thread and collapse it, or we just stand aside and let it collapse on its own. That's not true, right? That is absurd, and I believe he's setting up a straw man here. Right now, the new communist movement is basically saying that we are entering a revolutionary epoch, right? That and this isn't based on just empirical study of the situation, right? Empiricism, it's based on understanding the process of how capitalism has changed, how imperialism itself has changed, which we're going to get into in this paper. Ooh. I apologize. My neck's bothering me. Now, when we say that we understand this process, right? Imperialism goes through a few stages of its life, right? There's classic Lenin's imperialism. Then, as World War I leads into World War II, this happens because the U.S. sort of emerges as the dominant imperialist power, right? And it's sort of forcing a new monetary game to be played and forcing all of the World War I belligerents and its allies to repay all these war debts that it cannot, which forces Germany to pay reparations, which leads to its sort of military buildup and need for capital and expansionism. Then we get to post-war imperialism, in which the U.S. becomes the major debtor, right? Or not debtor, creditor of the world. Monetary imperialism begins. And then we get sort of the 70s switch, in which the U.S. maintains imperial rule through being a debtor nation rather than a creditor, right? And along with this, this allows sort of technology to just blow up, right? Efficiency is more than ever before in history, right? Now, sorry, my neck is really bothering me, guys. We get to this technological revolution of computers, AI, right? And then, like, just stay with me. Today, in the era of reproletarianization, we're getting to the point where, because of this, because of AI, self-driving cars, all that stuff, right? The relations of production are being outmoded by the forces of production, spurred on by the fact that our entire system is based on debt now, right? So that the old boss worker relationship kind of doesn't make sense anymore. We say that we're in the beginning of that era, the end of the possibility for these obsolete social relations to continue on. Anyway, firstly, the crisis of 2008 was a classic crisis of overproduction. In the USA, too many houses were built and sold on credit to the bankrupt. No, that is not a classic crisis of overproduction. He forgets the fact that even the price of money for the financial real estate cartel has been gamed already. We're living in a planned economy. I'm sorry, my neck is killing me, guys. I apologize. I'm going to have to cut this short. Tell you what, we're only at the very beginning of this. Let's go over it tomorrow. I apologize so much. Like, I put it in an hour and a half, and the talking is just really, really straining my injury, and I really should go. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to have to give it a rest on that. I am so sorry, y'all. Where is the right one? There it is. Yeah, I apologize. That's going to have to do it for us for the night. It's going to be really good when we get into this, though. Because Badu is like supposedly like Lord Smarty Pants, right? And he makes these very, very basic mistakes. Like 2008 being a classic crisis of overproduction. The real estate bubble and the subprime mortgage crash and then the bailouts are anything but a classic crisis of overproduction where so many commodities are made that they can't. Anyway, I gotta go. We're gonna end the way we always do. And again, I apologize so much. Thank you all for being with me here tonight. And at least going through the first part of that. We'll get to the second part tomorrow. I promise. We're gonna go out the same way we always do with the International. Y'all have a great night.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. International unites the world in song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come from above. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world